Mike Anderson was barely making ends meet as a single dad in a small town. His old Toyota Corolla wasn't much, but it got him to his 3 jobs and his daughter to school. One rainy night, a desperate stranger knocked on his door needing help. Despite having work the next morning, Mike did something that would change his life forever. He handed over his keys. It was all he had to give. But sometimes the smallest acts of kindness open the biggest doors. The next day, that same stranger returned, not in his beat-up car, but in a private jet. She wasn't just any traveler. She was one of the wealthiest people in the world. But why had she been searching for someone like Mike? And what made his simple act of kindness so special to her? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Daddy, the toaster's doing that funny smell again. Mike Anderson looked up from the stack of bills spread across the kitchen table, his daughter's voice pulling him from columns of red numbers. Sarah stood on her tippy toes by the counter, her wild brown curls escaping from hastily done pigtails, nose wrinkled at the ancient appliance. "Back away, princess," he said, pushing aside an overdue electric notice to rescue what remained of their breakfast. The toast was charred on one side, barely warm on the other, par for the course with their temperamental toaster. "How about peanut butter on the good side?" Sarah nodded solemnly, sliding into her usual chair. At 8 years old, she had mastered the art of pretending everything was fine, a skill Mike wished she'd never had to learn. Her small fingers traced the edges of a handmade birthday card she'd been working on since yesterday, not for herself, but for Maria next door, their saving grace of a neighbor who watched Sarah during Mike's night shifts. "Think she'll like it?" Sarah held up the card, revealing a crayon masterpiece of stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "That's Maria, and that's me, and that's you, and that's—" Her voice caught slightly. "That's Mommy in the clouds." Mike swallowed hard, spreading peanut butter over the salvageable side of the toast. 3 years had passed since cancer took Emily, but moments like these still felt like walking on broken glass. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Maria will love it." The wall clock, a garage sale find with a slightly crooked number 6, showed 6:45 a.m. First shift at Pete's Auto Shop started at 7:30, followed by afternoon deliveries for local businesses, then night security at the mall from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Sleep came in patches between shifts, often at the kitchen table while helping. "Sarah with homework. Backpack ready?" he asked, sliding the toast across to her. Sarah nodded, mouth full of peanut butter. Her school uniform was second-hand, but meticulously clean, ironed late last night while she slept. The shoes, though, were showing wear, another item for the growing list of things they needed but couldn't afford. "Ms. Rodriguez says we're having a career day next week," Sarah said, carefully wiping crumbs from her mouth. "She says parents can come talk about their jobs." Mike's heart squeezed. "That sounds interesting." "I told her you have 3 jobs, so maybe you could come 3 times?" Sarah's eyes sparkled with innocent pride. "That's more than anyone else's parents." Before Mike could respond, a gentle knock at the back door announced Maria's arrival. She was their neighbor of 5 years, a retired teacher with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Maria had been Emily's friend, first and after. Well, after everything, she'd become family. "Buenos dias," Maria called, letting herself in. The smell of fresh tamales wafted in with her. "I made too many again. Such a shame they'll go to waste if nobody helps me eat." Them. It was a dance they did every week. Maria's accidental cooking that somehow always yielded enough extra to feed them. Mike had tried to pay her back in the beginning, but she'd firmly refused. "Family helps family," she'd said. And that was that. Sarah bounced up to hug her, the birthday card clutched behind her back. "Maria, is it really your birthday today?" "Ah, mi amor, you remembered." Maria's face lit up. 65 years young today. Mike watched as Sarah presented her card with flourish, explaining each crayon detail. Maria's eyes misted over at the stick figure in the clouds, and she hugged Sarah tight. "Mi angel, it's perfect, the most beautiful card I've ever received." The clock struck 7 a.m. Mike grabbed his keys. The Toyota's ignition was finicky, would need an extra few minutes to coax it to life. Sarah, shoes on. Maria, thank you for... Go, go. Maria waved him off. Sarah and I have big plans today. Reading, mathematics, maybe some secret birthday baking. As Mike helped Sarah with her shoelaces, a bill slipped from his pocket. The fourth notice for her upcoming school fees. He quickly stuffed it back in, but not before catching Maria's concerned glance. The private school had been Emily's dream for Sarah, her final wish. The scholarship helped, but even the reduced fees were stretching them to breaking point. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice was small as they walked to the car. "Jenny's having a birthday party next weekend. She invited the whole class." Mike's stomach clenched. Birthday parties meant presents, proper clothes, another expense they couldn't afford. "We'll see, Princess. Maybe we can..." The Toyota coughed twice before grudgingly turning over. Sarah buckled herself in, humming softly, the same lullaby Emily used to sing. In the rearview mirror, Mike saw Maria standing in the doorway, the birthday card held carefully in her hands. 3 jobs, endless bills, and a daughter trying so hard to be brave. But when Sarah caught his eye in the mirror and smiled, Emily's smile, bright as sunrise, Mike knew he'd work 100 jobs if that's what it took to keep that smile. Alive! The Toyota rumbled down their street, past the for sale signs that seemed to multiply weekly, past the shuttered windows of businesses that couldn't weather the economic downturn. Another day of keeping their heads above water, of making ends meet through sheer will and grace. Little did Mike know that by this time tomorrow, everything would change. But for now, he had a daughter to drop off at school, 3 jobs to juggle, and a beat-up Toyota that needed to hold together for just a little longer. The storm hit just after midnight. Mike sat at his security desk in the empty mall, watching raindrops race down the glass doors. Thunder rattled the windows, and somewhere in the building, a loose sign creaked rhythmically. His evening coffee, the last from his thermos, had gone cold hours ago. His phone buzzed, a text from Maria. "Sarah had a nightmare. She's okay now. Asked me to tell you she loves you to the moon and back." Mike's throat tightened. Emily used to say that, to the moon and back. He started typing a response when headlights swept across the mall entrance, catching his attention. Not the usual patrol car. This was different. A sleek black sedan pulled up, clearly expensive, but with steam billowing from under its hood. The driver's door opened, and a figure emerged into the downpour. A woman in what had probably been an elegant business suit before the rain got to it. She hurried to the entrance, a sodden designer scarf clutched around her shoulders. Mike unlocked the door, security training warring with basic human decency. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Up close, she was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 30s. Despite her drenched appearance, there was something commanding about her presence. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she said, her accent suggesting old money and Ivy League education. "My car, I think it's the radiator. My phone's dead, and I've been driving for hours trying to find somewhere open." Mike glanced at her car. Even with his mechanic's experience, that wasn't a quick fix. Nearest open service station is 40 miles away in Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids? She pressed her fingers to her temples. "I need to be in Chicago by morning. A meeting I absolutely cannot miss." Her composure cracked slightly. "I don't suppose there's a car rental place open at this hour?" "Not around here." Mike hesitated. "Look, I work at Pete's auto shop during the day. First thing tomorrow I could..." "Tomorrow will be too late." She straightened, reaching for her purse. "I'll pay whatever it takes. Surely there must be some service that..." "They'll all say the same thing. That engine needs to cool before..." "Anyone can work on it safely." Outside, the rain intensified. The woman, who still hadn't introduced herself, paced a tight circle. "I should have listened to James about getting the car serviced, but I had to do this my way. Prove I could. Handle..." She stopped, seeming to remember she had an audience. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." Mike thought of Sarah, of all the times they'd needed help and someone had stepped up, Maria with her extra tamales. Pete keeping him on at the shop even when business was slow, Emily's parents helping with school fees when they could. Sometimes, kindness was all you had to give. "My car," he said slowly. "It's not much, a '99 Corolla, but it runs. You could take it to Chicago, have someone drive it back tomorrow." She stared at him. "You'd lend your car to a complete stranger. You'd trust a complete stranger's car." That startled a laugh out of her. She studied him with new interest. "Why would you do that?" Mike shrugged. "Because you need help. And sometimes that's reason enough. Just like that, you don't want collateral, references, proof I'm not going to steal your car? Are you going to steal my car?" "No, but then we're good." He pulled out his keys, separating the Toyotas from the bunch. "It takes a few tries to start sometimes. Fuel gauge sticks at quarter tank, but it's actually full. And the passenger window doesn't roll down, so don't try." She stood frozen, designer scarf dripping onto the mall's polished floor. "I don't even know your name." "Mike Anderson. Alexandra," she said after a pause that suggested she was choosing what name to give. "Alexandra Pierce." Mike held out the keys. "Nice to meet you, Alexandra Pierce. Drive safely." She reached for them, then hesitated. "Your job. Won't you get in trouble for leaving?" "Night shift ends at 5. I'll call Pete. Tell him I'll be late to the shop. He'll understand." Alexandra took the keys, her manicured fingers brushing his weathered ones. "I'll bring it back tomorrow, I promise. And Mr. Anderson, thank you. Not many people would. Sometimes a little trust goes a long way." Mike thought of Sarah's crayon drawings, of Maria's tamales, of Emily's last smile. "Just take care of her. That car's got a lot of memories." Alexandra nodded, clutching the keys like they were made of gold. She turned to go, then looked back. "Your daughter. The photo on your keys. She has your smile." Before Mike could respond, she was gone, hurrying through the rain to the Toyota. The engine coughed once, twice, then caught. Headlights swung around and the car pulled away, carrying a stranger into the storm. Mike watched until the taillights disappeared. Tomorrow would be interesting, trying to get Sarah to school and himself to work. But right now, in the quiet of the empty mall with rain drumming on the roof, he felt oddly at peace. His phone buzzed again, Maria sending a photo of Sarah finally asleep with her favorite stuffed rabbit. Below it she'd written, "You're a good man, Mike Anderson. Emily would be proud." He smiled, tucked the phone away, and settled in to finish his shift. Outside, the storm raged on, but somewhere out there, a beat-up Toyota was carrying hope down the highway, 1 mile at a time. Dawn broke over Main Street as Mike walked home from his night shift, his steps heavy with fatigue. The storm had passed, leaving puddles that reflected a sky streaked with pink and gold. Pete had been understanding about the car. He'd even offered to pick Mike up for his afternoon shift, but the real challenge would be explaining things to Sarah. The smell of coffee and fresh bread wafted from Joe's diner. Inside, early regulars pressed against the windows, clustered around. The morning paper. Joe himself burst out the door, paper in hand. "Mike, you seen this?" He thrust the Cedar Rapids Gazette forward. "Your midnight visitor. She's all over the news." Mike blinked at the headline. "Pierce, IRS missing. Billionaire's daughter vanishes before crucial board meeting." Below was a photo of Alexandra Pierce at some charity gala, looking polished and powerful in an evening gown. Her eyes held the same determination he'd seen last night, even through the rain. Billionaire's daughter. Mike's mouth went dry. Alexandra. "Pierce." Joe was practically bouncing. "The Pierce Industries' Alexandra Pierce. Word is, she ran away from some big corporate showdown. Her family's going crazy looking for her." Mike's phone chose that moment to ring, an unknown number. His heart jumped, but it was just a reporter from the local station. They'd already traced the mysterious woman's path to their town. "No comment," he managed, ending the call. 3. More messages blinked on his screen. Inside the diner, the regulars were having a field day. Mike heard fragments as he passed. "Could buy the whole town 10 times over. Wonder if she'll remember us little people. Always knew. Something big would happen here." Maria was waiting on his front porch, worry creasing her face. Mijo, you're all over the morning news. Sarah's been watching the coverage. She's so excited. Sarah's watching the news. Mike quickened his pace. He found his daughter glued to Maria's small TV, still in her pajamas. On screen, a reporter stood outside Pierce Industries headquarters in Chicago. Sources say Alexandra Pierce arrived moments ago for the emergency board meeting. The question everyone's asking: where has the heiress been, and what statement will she make about— "Daddy!" Sarah launched herself at him. "You helped a princess, just like in my books." "Not a princess, sweetheart. Just someone who needed help." Mike sank into his chair, exhaustion hitting hard. "Come on, you'll be late for school." "But Daddy, the car—" "Maria's gonna drive you today," he managed to smile. "Remember what Mom used to say about helping others?" Sarah nodded solemnly. "It always comes back around, like a big circle of good things." "That's right." Mike kissed her forehead. "Now go get dressed." Once Sarah was upstairs, Maria brought him coffee, her expression concerned. "What are you thinking, giving your car to a stranger, even a rich one?" "I didn't know she was rich." Mike stared into his coffee. "She was just someone who needed help. And now you're all over the news." Maria sat beside him. "Your phone's been ringing since dawn. Channel 5 wants an interview. The Cedar Rapids paper too." Mike groaned. "I don't want interviews. I just want my car back." "The richest family in the Midwest, Mike. They could buy and sell this town without blinking." Maria patted his hand. "Maybe this is God's way of helping you with Sarah's school fees." "I didn't help her for money." "No?" Maria smiled. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Sarah came bouncing back downstairs in her uniform, pigtails slightly crooked. "Can we drive past the mall, Maria? I want to see where Daddy met Ms. Pierce." A new text lit up Mike's phone, Pete offering to cover his morning shift too. "Get some rest," his boss wrote. "Something tells me today's going to get interesting." Mike walked them to Maria's car, helping Sarah with her backpack. The morning sun caught a newspaper lying in a puddle, Alexandra's photo warped by the water. In the photo, she wore a scarf, the same one that had dripped onto the mall floor last night. "Daddy?" Sarah rolled down her window. "When she brings the Toyota back, can I meet her? I want to show her my drawing of our car. I made it in class yesterday before it became famous." Mike smiled despite his exhaustion. "We'll see, Princess. First, let's just get through today." As Maria's car pulled away, more reporters were arriving on the street. Mike went inside, unplugged his phone and headed for bed. His last thought before sleep took him was of Alexandra Pierce, wondering if she'd made it to her meeting, if the old Toyota had served her well. In his dreams, he heard Emily's voice. "It always comes back around, love. Like a big circle of good things." He couldn't have known then just how right she would turn out to be. The sound woke Mike from his fitful sleep, a deep rhythmic thrum that made the windows vibrate. He stumbled to his feet, disoriented as Sarah burst into his room. "Daddy, there's a helicopter in the sky." Not just one helicopter. 3 news. Choppers circled overhead like excited birds, and on the street a crowd was gathering. Through his window, Mike saw neighbors pointing upward, phones raised to capture whatever was coming. Then he heard it, different from the helicopters, a deeper sound. The crowd shifted, faces turning eastward. Against the afternoon sky, a sleek private jet descended, impossibly low over their small town. "Holy!" Mike grabbed his jacket. "Sarah, stay with Maria." But Sarah was already racing downstairs, screen door banging behind her. Mike followed, emerging onto a street he barely recognized. News vans lined both sides, reporters doing live updates. The jet was circling now. "And behind it, is that the Goodyear blimp?" someone asked incredulously. Police Chief Roberts was trying to control the chaos, directing traffic away from the mall parking lot, the only space in town large enough for what was about to happen. Mike spotted Pete from the auto shop, Maria clutching Sarah's hand, and what seemed like half the town's population, all staring skyward. The jet made one final pass, then disappeared. For a moment, everything was still. Then a black SUV convoy swept down Main Street, led by police escorts. They turned into the mall lot, forming a precise circle. Men in dark suits and earpieces emerged, scanning the crowd. And there, gleaming in the afternoon sun, was Mike's Toyota Corolla. Alexandra Pierce stepped out of it looking nothing like the drenched stranger from last night. Her suit was immaculate, her presence commanding. She handed the keys to one of the suited men and scanned the crowd until she found Mike. "Mr. Anderson," she called, voice carrying across the suddenly hushed parking lot. "I believe I owe you a car." Mike felt Sarah's small hand slip into his as Alexandra walked toward them. The crowd parted like a scene from a movie. Behind her, the jet appeared again, lower this time. It was going to land right there on their mall parking lot. "I drove it myself," Alexandra said when she reached them, as if continuing a normal conversation. "All the way to Chicago. It got me to my meeting with 2 minutes to spare." She smiled at Sarah. "You must be the artist. I saw your drawings." "On the refrigerator." Sarah stared up at her, wide-eyed. "Did our car do okay?" "Better than okay." Alexandra knelt to Sarah's level, something that seemed to startle her security team. "It reminded me of something I'd forgotten, something very important." The jet touched down behind them with a grace that seemed impossible for its size. Its door opened, stairs extending. "Mr. Anderson." "Mike." Alexandra stood. "Would you and Sarah join me for a conversation? There's someone I'd like you to meet." Mike hesitated. "I have work in an hour." "Already cleared it with Pete," Chief Roberts called out helpfully. "Take all the time you need, Mike." The crowd was watching, phones recording every moment. Mike saw the news crews pressing closer, saw his neighbors, eager faces, but mostly he saw Sarah looking at the jet with the same expression she had when reading her fairy tales. "Just a conversation?" he asked Alexandra. She nodded. "Just a conversation, though it might be a life-changing one." From the jet emerged an elderly man in an elegant suit, his white hair and bearing marking him unmistakably as Charles Pierce, Alexandra's father and one of the wealthiest men in America. He walked toward them with the aid of a carved wooden cane. "So," he said warmly, reaching them, "this is the man who helped my daughter remember who she really is." Sarah tugged Mike's hand. "Daddy, is this real?" Mike looked at his Toyota, at the jet, at Alexandra Pierce standing in his hometown like she belonged there. "I'm not sure, Princess." "It's real," Alexandra said softly. "And if you're willing to trust me one more time, it's just the beginning." Behind them, the Goodyear blimp drifted across the sky, its electronic display scrolling a message. "Thank you, Mike Anderson." Maria stepped forward, pressing something into Mike's hand. Sarah's drawing of their Toyota. "For good luck," she whispered in Spanish. Mike looked at the drawing, then at his daughter's hopeful face. Sometimes, he thought, the biggest doors open with the smallest keys. "Okay," he said, "let's have that conversation." As they walked toward the jet, Sarah skipping between them, Mike heard his neighbors break into applause. Above them, the news. Helicopters circled like metal birds, broadcasting this moment to the world. But all Mike could think about was Emily's voice in his dreams. "It always comes back around, love." Like a big circle of good things, the jet's stairs weren't just stairs anymore. They were the first steps into a new chapter, one that had started with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night. The interior of the jet felt like stepping into another world. Cream leather seats, polished wood panels, and what Sarah whispered was, "the biggest TV I've ever seen." A flight attendant offered them drinks. Apple juice for Sarah, water for Mike, and nothing for Alexandra, who seemed too focused to consider refreshments. Charles Pierce settled into his seat with the ease of a man who'd spent more time in private jets than cars. "Sarah," he said warmly, "I hear you're quite the artist. Would you like to see the pilot's cabin while we talk with your father?" Sarah looked at Mike questioningly. He nodded, and she followed the flight attendant forward, her excited chatter fading as the cabin door closed. "First," Alexandra said, placing a familiar set of keys on the table between them. "Your car is fully serviced, detailed and refueled, though that's just the beginning of what I owe you." "You don't owe me anything," Mike started, but Charles raised a hand. "Young man, do you know what happened in Chicago yesterday?" Mike shook his head. "My daughter walked into a board meeting that was meant to remove her from our company. The board claimed she was out of touch, disconnected from real people. They had documentation, testimonials, even psychological evaluations." Charles smiled. "Then she told them about a night security guard who lent his only car to a stranger." Alexandra leaned forward. "I've spent the last year searching for something, Mike. Traveling incognito, trying to understand what our company was missing. The board was right. I was out of touch, but not in the way they thought." She pulled out a tablet, bringing up images of various Pierce Industries properties. "We own hundreds of businesses, but we've lost sight of what matters. The human element, the trust that builds communities." She paused. "The kind of trust that makes a man lend his car to a stranger on a rainy night." "What my daughter is trying to say," Charles interjected, "is that your act of kindness didn't just help her get to a meeting. It helped her find what she's been looking for." Alexandra nodded. "We're launching a new division of Pierce Industries, community-focused development, small business support, ethical investment in struggling towns. Not charity, partnership, real change from the ground up." Mike looked between them. "What does this have to do with me?" "Everything." Alexandra's eyes lit up. "I want you to help me run it." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the jet's engines seemed to hold their breath. "I do work in a garage," Mike managed. "I'm a night security guard. I don't know anything about running companies." "You know everything that matters," Alexandra countered. "Integrity, community, real people dealing with real challenges. Everything else can be learned." Charles cleared his throat. "The salary, of course, would be substantial. Full benefits, housing allowance, educational trust for Sarah. I don't want charity," Mike said firmly. "Good," Alexandra replied, "because this isn't charity. It's an investment. In you, in your perspective, in everything you represent, that our company has forgotten." She pulled out a contract, sliding it across the table. "Take it home, read it, have a lawyer review it. But know this. That night, when you handed me your keys, you weren't just helping a stranger. You were showing me what business should be about. Trust, humanity, doing the right thing simply because it's right." From the pilot's cabin came Sarah's delighted laugh. Mike thought of her school fees, of the worn shoes she tried to hide, of all the birthday parties she pretended not to mind missing. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Really?" Alexandra exchanged a look with her father, then reached for her purse. She withdrew a worn photograph, herself as a child, standing proudly next to an old car with an elderly man. "My grandfather," she said softly. "He started Pierce Industries from a small auto repair shop. One car, one customer at a time, built it on trust and hard work. Somewhere along the way we forgot that." She touched the photo gently. "Last night in your Toyota," "I remembered," Charles spoke up. "The board wanted Alexandra to prove she understood business. Instead, she proved she understands people. That's worth more than an MBA from Harvard. Believe me, she has one of those too." "Take a week," Alexandra said. "Think it over. Talk to Sarah, to Maria, to anyone you trust. This isn't just a job offer. It's a chance to help other families like yours, other communities like this one." Through the window, Mike could see his hometown spread out below. The mall where he worked nights, Pete's garage, the school where Sarah drew pictures of their car. A community of people who helped each other, who kept each other going. "And if I say no, then you say no." Alexandra shrugged. "The car's still serviced, and you have a great story to tell, but something tells me you won't say no. Because you understand what I finally learned. Sometimes the biggest impact comes from the smallest acts of trust." The pilot's cabin door opened, and Sarah emerged, wearing a captain's hat and grinning from ear to ear. "Daddy, they showed me how to use the radio!" And guess what? You can see our whole town from up here. Mike looked at his daughter's shining face, then back at the contract. Alexandra was right. He'd need lawyers to understand the details, but he understood the principle. Trust given freely, returned tenfold. 1 week, he said finally. I'll think about it. Alexandra smiled. That's all I ask. After all, you've already taught me the most important lesson. Sometimes you have to let go of something to see its true value. Outside, the sun was setting over their small town, painting the sky in colors that looked different from up here. But the truth that had started this whole adventure remained the same. No matter the altitude, sometimes the smallest keys really do open the biggest doors. That night, after Sarah finally fell asleep, still wearing the pilot's hat Alexandra had let her keep, Mike sat at his kitchen table with a familiar companion, Emily's old photo album. The contract from Alexandra lay unopened beside it, heavy with possibility. "What would you say about all this?" he whispered, touching a photo of Emily holding newborn Sarah. The image was creased from frequent handling, Emily's smile forever, frozen in that moment of pure joy. A soft knock at the back door interrupted his thoughts. Maria entered carrying her usual late-night tea tray, though this time she'd added a slice of her special tres leches cake. "For celebrations," she said, setting it down. "Nothing to celebrate yet," Mike replied. "I haven't decided anything." Maria settled into Emily's old chair, the one by the window. "Tell me what's in your heart, mijijo." Mike opened the photo album to their wedding day. Emily in her second-hand dress, him in his father's suit, both of them laughing because the ring had gotten stuck halfway down her finger. "We had nothing," he said softly, "but we were happy. Simple life, simple dreams. And now," he touched the contract. "Now I could give Sarah everything Emily wanted for her. The school fees wouldn't be a problem. She could have new shoes, birthday parties, college savings." He trailed off. "But it feels like letting go of something." "Of Emily? Of who we are, this life we built. It's not much, but it's real." He gestured around the small kitchen, with its mismatched chairs and crayon drawings on the fridge. "Up there in that jet today, everything was perfect. Too perfect, maybe." Maria poured the tea, adding honey the way Emily used to. "Your wife didn't marry you because you were rich or poor. She married you because you have a good heart. That won't change with a bigger paycheck." Mike opened another page of the album. Sarah's 5th birthday, the last one before Emily got sick. They'd managed to invite her whole class, spent weeks saving for decorations and cake. Emily had been tired that day, but her smile still lit up every photo. Alexandra said something about her grandfather, he mused, how he built their company from a small auto shop, just like Pete's. But look at them now. Private jets and corporate takeovers. What if this changes us? Changes Sarah? "Mi amor," Maria said gently. "Change is not always loss. Sometimes it's growth." She pointed to a photo of Emily in her teaching days. "Remember what she used to tell her students?" Mike nodded. "Your circumstances don't define you. Your choices do." A floorboard creaked, and they looked up to find Sarah in the doorway, still in her pajamas, the pilot's hat askew on her sleep-mussed hair. "I can't sleep," she said, climbing into Mike's lap like she used to when she was smaller. "Are we really going to work with Ms. Alexandra?" Mike smoothed her hair. "I don't know yet, Princess. It's a big decision. Our life would be very different." Sarah picked up the photo of Emily's last birthday, the one where she'd insisted on making the cake herself, despite being too weak to stand for long. "Would Mom want us to go?" The question hit Mike like a physical blow. Maria reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Your mom," he said carefully, "wanted you to have every opportunity, but she also wanted you to stay true to yourself. Like when she let me wear my superhero costume to picture day?" Mike chuckled. "Exactly like that." Sarah studied the contract with a child's solemn curiosity. Ms. Alexandra was nice. Not scary rich person nice, but real nice. Like Maria. "High praise indeed," Maria smiled. "And Daddy?" Sarah turned those eyes, Emily's eyes, on him. You always say helping people is important. Maybe Miss Alexandra needs our help too. She looked kind of lonely in her big jet, out of the mouths of babes. Mike remembered Alexandra's face when she talked about her grandfather's auto shop, the way she'd lit up describing her plans to help communities like theirs. When did you get so wise, Princess? Mom always said I got it from you. Maria stood, gathering the tea things. The sun will rise tomorrow, whether you say yes or no. But Emily didn't marry a man who was afraid of new chapters. She married a man who lent his only car to a stranger on a rainy night. After Sarah went back to bed, Mike stayed up looking at photos. Emily graduating college, Emily starting her teaching job, Emily holding Sarah for the first time. Each image a leap of faith, a new chapter begun. The last photo in the album was from a month before she died. They're sitting on their front porch, Sarah between them, all three laughing at some forgotten joke. On the back, Emily had written, "Remember, love, the best stories are the ones that surprise you." Mike picked up the contract. Maybe it was time to be surprised again. The men's department at Wilson's Clothing felt foreign to Mike. He stood before a wall of suits, price tags making his head spin, while Mr. Wilson himself hovered nearby with a measuring tape. "Miss Pierce was very specific," the older man said, holding up a charcoal grey jacket. "Only the best for her new Director of Community Development." The title still felt strange on Mike's tongue. He'd signed the contract yesterday after having Pete's brother-in-law, a local lawyer, review it. The salary figure alone had made the lawyer whistle. "Just something simple," Mike insisted. "Professional, but not pretentious." Mr. Wilson nodded knowingly. "Something that says you earned your seat at the table." In the next fitting room, Sarah was having the time of her life with Mrs. Wilson, trying on new school clothes. Her delighted gasps carried through the store. "Daddy, this one has pockets." Mike smiled, then caught his reflection in the mirror. A man at a crossroads, trying to bridge two worlds. The suit jacket settled onto his shoulders, and Mr. Wilson adjusted the fit. "You know," the older man said, "I remember fitting your wedding suit. You and Emily were so young, so full of dreams. You remember that?" Of course. Emily insisted on paying for the alterations herself, said her groom needed to look like $1 million, even if they only had 20 to their name. A lump formed in Mike's throat. The bell above the shop door chimed, and Alexandra Pierce walked in, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, looking more like the rain-soaked stranger from that night than a corporate heiress. "How's it going?" she asked, then smiled at Sarah's excited wave from the other fitting room. "It's different," Mike admitted. Alexandra nodded. "Good different or overwhelming different?" "Both." She picked up a blue tie, held it against the jacket. "You know, my grandfather wore the same suit to every board meeting for 15 years, said it kept him grounded, reminded him where he came from." She handed him the tie. "The clothes don't make the man, Mike. They just help him move through different worlds." Sarah emerged in a new school uniform, twirling. "Look, Daddy, no patches." The pure joy in his daughter's face brought everything into focus. This wasn't about suits or titles. It was about opportunities, not just for them, but for other families who needed a chance. "The board meeting is next week," Alexandra said. "But first I want you to come see something. Both of you." She turned to Sarah. "How would you like to fly in the jet again?" Sarah bounced with excitement, but looked to Mike first. He nodded. "Just let me change and wear the suit," Alexandra suggested. "Consider it a dress rehearsal." An hour later, they were airborne. Mike felt more comfortable in the jet this time, though the suit was another matter. Sarah sat next to him, proudly wearing her new school cardigan, while Alexandra worked on her laptop. "Where are we going?" Mike finally asked. "Millbrook," Alexandra replied. "About an hour north. Population 5,000, Main Street half boarded up, 3 factories closed in the last decade. Sounds familiar?" "Exactly." She turned her laptop around, showing him images of a small town much like their own. "This is our first project, if you're ready." The jet landed in a small airfield. A crowd had gathered, not as large as the one in their town, but substantial. Mike recognized the look in their eyes, hope mixed with wariness, dreams tempered by too many broken promises. Alexandra led them to a podium that had been set up. The mayor, a weathered man in his 60s, shook Mike's hand. "Folks," Alexandra addressed the crowd, "I'd like you to meet Mike Anderson, our new Director of Community Development. He's going to help us bring Millbrook back to life. Not with handouts, but with partnerships, because he understands something I learned recently. Real change starts with trust." Mike looked at the faces before him. Factory workers, shop owners, families not so different from his own. He thought of his Toyota, of rain-soaked nights and simple acts of kindness. Stepping to the microphone, he took a deep breath. "I'm not going to make any fancy promises," he began, "but I will make you one guarantee. We're going to build something real here, together." Sarah slipped her hand into his, and in that moment, the suit didn't feel quite so foreign anymore. Maybe Mr. Wilson was right. He had earned his seat at the table, not with wealth or education, but with something far more valuable, understanding what it meant to need a chance and what it meant to give one. The mayor handed him a key to the city, and Mike thought of another key, given on a rainy night that felt like a lifetime ago. Sometimes the smallest keys really did open the biggest doors. You just had to be brave enough to turn them. The business textbook sat open on Mike's new desk, its margins filled with his careful notes. 3 weeks into his new role, and his head still swam with terms like sustainable development and community-based entrepreneurship. But beneath the corporate jargon, he was beginning to see patterns that made sense. Mr. Anderson, his assistant, he still couldn't believe he had an assistant, poked her head in. "The Millbrook factory owners are here for their meeting." "Thanks, Jenny, and please, it's just Mike." She smiled, used to this exchange by now. "Of course, Mr. Anderson." The conference room windows overlooked Main Street, where the Pierce Industries sign now shared space with local businesses. Alexandra had insisted their office be right in town, not in some gleaming tower in the city. 4 men and 2 women sat around the table, their expressions a mix of hope and skepticism. Mike recognized that look. He'd worn it himself not so long ago. "Before we start," he said, setting aside the prepared presentation, "tell me about your first jobs." They blinked, thrown off script. Then Tom Miller, who'd owned the textile factory for 30 years, leaned forward. "Paper route," he said. "Saved every penny for my first car." Others joined in. Waitressing, lawn mowing, babysitting. Simple. Jobs that built character, taught value. "My daughter Sarah," Mike told them, "just started her first job, helping Maria, our neighbor, organize her recipe books. Makes $2 an hour and thinks she's rich." He smiled at their chuckles. "The point is, we all started somewhere, and that's what we're going to give back to this town. Not just jobs, first jobs, starting places." He pulled out his own notes, handwritten on lined paper rather than the sleek tablet Alexandra had given him. "Your factories have history. They've put kids through college, paid for weddings, helped families, weather tough times. We're not here to erase that history. We're here to build on it." The next hour flew by as they discussed modernization plans, training programs, sustainable practices. These weren't just buzzwords anymore. They were keys to keeping families together, communities alive. Later that afternoon, Alexandra found him in his office, surrounded by budget reports and local business proposals. "How'd it go?" she asked, settling into the chair across from him. "They're on board, all 6 of them." Mike rubbed his tired eyes. "Though I probably broke every rule in this book about corporate negotiations." Alexandra picked up the business textbook. "Rules are guidelines, not chains. You got them on board because you spoke their language. Community, family, real stakes." "I keep waiting to wake up," Mike admitted. "All this." He gestured at the office, his new suit the view of their changing town. "It still feels like someone else's life sometimes," says the man who just secured a 6-way partnership that my top negotiators couldn't crack. She smiled. "You know, What my grandfather used to say. The best business leaders are the ones who never forget what it's like to be on the other side of the desk. Mike's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah with a photo of her and Maria sorting recipe cards, both grinning proudly. Below it was a message from Pete at the garage. Factory owners stopped by. Whatever you said, it worked. 3 guys already asked about apprentice programs. It's happening, isn't it? Mike looked up at Alexandra. Real change. Thanks to you. She stood to leave, then paused. Oh, the board wants to meet next week. Quarterly review. Mike's stomach tightened. He'd been dreading this, facing the same people who'd tried to push Alexandra out, who'd called her out of touch. Just be yourself, she said, reading his expression. That's what got us here. After she left, Mike turned to the wall where he'd hung Sarah's drawing of their Toyota. Below it now was a photo from the Millbrook announcement, him in his new suit, but with his old determination. His phone buzzed again, a message from Maria. Sarah's making plans for her recipe book empire. Says she's going to be just like her daddy, helping people's dreams come true. Mike looked at the business textbook, then at the family photo on his desk. Emily would have loved this, he thought. Not the office or the title, but the chance to make a difference. He picked up the next proposal, a small bakery looking to expand, to hire local youth, to keep tradition alive while embracing change. Just like him, the sun was setting over Main Street, painting the old buildings in new light. In the distance, he could see the factory windows gleaming. Tomorrow, they'd start planning the apprentice programs. More first jobs, more starting places, more keys to more doors. Mike opened his notebook and began to write, his words flowing easier now. The business language was becoming familiar, but it was the old lessons that guided his hand. Trust given. Freely, kindness returned tenfold, and the courage to believe in new beginnings. Local hero or corporate puppet. The truth behind Pierce Industries' latest PR move. The headline screamed from the tabloid someone had left on Mike's desk. Below it was a photo of him and Alexandra leaving a community meeting, the angle and timing making their professional interaction appear intimate. Ignore it, Alexandra had said when the story first broke. But it wasn't that simple anymore. Not with reporters camping outside Sarah's school, not with whispers following them at church, and certainly not with Emily's parents' unexpected visit. We're worried, Helen Green said, sitting stiffly in Mike's living room. Her husband, Robert, nodded beside her. All this attention, this sudden wealth, it's not what Emily would have wanted for Sarah. Mike kept his voice steady. Emily wanted Sarah to have opportunities. Opportunities, yes, Robert agreed. But this circus, her pictures all over the internet, Michael, Cinderella's story, from security guard to corporate executive. They're making a spectacle of our granddaughter. As if on cue, a camera flash lit up the window. The reporters had found them again. I should have anticipated this, Mike muttered, pulling the curtains closed. I was naive. Helen softened slightly. We know you're trying to do the right thing. But Emily was always so protective of Sarah's privacy. And now with these rumors about you and that Pierce woman. There's nothing between Alexandra and me, Mike said firmly. She's my boss, my mentor, that's all. Tell that to the tabloids, Robert gestured at the newspaper. Tell that to Sarah's classmates who wave these stories in her face. Mike's phone buzzed. Another message from the board secretary about next week's meeting. They wanted him to present a formal 5-year plan. His stomach churned at the thought. Maybe, Helen hesitated, maybe it would be better if Sarah stayed with us for a while, just until things settle down. Our neighborhood is quiet, no reporters, no gossip. The suggestion hit Mike like a physical blow. You want to take my daughter? Not take, Robert clarified quickly. Just protect her. Give her some normalcy. Before Mike could respond, the back door opened. Maria and Sarah came in carrying grocery bags. Sarah's face lit up at seeing her grandparents, then fell as she caught the tension in the room. Abuela, she said quietly, did you see the mean stories too? Helen reached for her granddaughter, but Sarah stepped back, moving closer to Maria. They say Daddy's different now. Sarah continued, that he's forgotten where he came from, but they're wrong. He still helps Mr. Pete at the garage sometimes. He still knows how to fix our toaster and—" She pulled something from her backpack. A newspaper clipping. Look what he did. It was an article about the Millbrook factories, not the gossip about his relationship with Alexandra, but the real story. Jobs returning, families staying together, a community finding hope again. Jenny helped me make copies for my whole class, Sarah said proudly. Now they know what my daddy really does. Maria stepped forward. Perhaps, she said diplomatically, we should all remember that Sarah has her father's strength and Emily's wisdom. Helen dabbed at her eyes. You sound just like her, sweetheart. She always could see right to the heart of things. The doorbell rang, Alexandra's distinctive 3-tap pattern. Mike had almost forgotten their scheduled review of the Millbrook contracts. Come in, he called, bracing for his in-law's reaction. Alexandra entered, then read the room instantly. I can come back. No, Sarah said firmly, surprising everyone. Stay. Show Grandma and Grandpa the pictures from the factory. Show them what we're building. Mike watched his daughter, standing tall in her school uniform, Emily's determined, chin tilted up. When had she become so strong? Alexandra hesitated, then pulled out her tablet. Actually, I brought something better. The apprentices made a video. They wanted to thank the man who gave them a second chance. As the video played, showing young faces full of hope, Mike saw Helen and Robert's expressions slowly change. These weren't corporate statistics or PR moves. These were real people, real lives changed. Emily always said, Helen whispered, that you had a gift for seeing the best in people. That's why the stories don't matter, Sarah added. Daddy's still Daddy. He just has bigger keys to open bigger doors for more people. Outside, another camera flashed. But inside this room, something was healing. Robert reached for the Millbrook article, reading it more carefully now. Helen watched the apprentice's video, her hand over her heart. And Mike looked at his daughter, who had somehow learned to navigate this new world without losing her way. Maybe she could teach him how. His phone buzzed again. The board. Secretary more urgent now. The 5-year plan, the presentations, the corporate politics all loomed. But right here, right now, watching his daughter bridge 2 worlds with her mother's grace, Mike knew they would find their way through. Sometimes, the biggest doors open not with keys, but with truth, and love, and a child's unwavering faith in what was real. The boardroom of Pierce Industries felt a long way from Pete's garage. Mike stood before floor-to-ceiling windows on the 40th floor, his reflection ghostly against Chicago's skyline. The 5-year plan sat in a leather portfolio on the polished table, each page perfect, professional, and completely wrong. They're going to eat you alive, James Morrison, one of Alexandra's executives, had warned earlier. The board doesn't want heartwarming stories about small towns. They want profit projections, expansion metrics, hard data. Sarah's diary entry from that morning weighed heavy in his pocket. He hadn't meant to read it, but it had fallen open while he was helping her pack for school. Sometimes I miss when Daddy could tuck me in every night. But I'm proud of him helping other people's daddies get jobs. I just wish the cameras would go away and people would stop making up stories about him and Miss Alexandra. Mom would know what to do. She always knew. The board members filed in. Faces he recognized from news articles and company reports. Alexandra entered last, giving him an encouraging nod. But something was off about her expression. Worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Mr. Anderson, Charles Pierce began, we've been following your community initiative with great interest. Perhaps you could begin by walking us through your 5-year projections. Mike opened the portfolio, then closed it again. Actually, sir, I'd like to tell you about Tommy Martinez first. A ripple of murmurs. Alexandra sat straighter. Tommy's 16, Mike continued. His dad lost their farm when the Millbrook factory closed. They were going to move to the city, split up the family to find work, but last week, Tommy started our apprentice program. He's learning industrial engineering, earning credits toward college. Mr. Anderson, a board member interrupted. We're here to discuss scalable business strategies, not individual cases. Tommy is our strategy. Mike's voice strengthened, because next year he'll be qualified to train other apprentices. Who will train others? Who'll rebuild their community from the ground up? That's sustainable growth, that's generational change. He pulled out his own notes. Not the polished projections, but the real numbers. Every dollar we invest in these communities returns threefold. Not in quarterly profits, but in stable workforces, loyal customers, and something you can't put on a spreadsheet. Trust. The board chairman leaned forward. And the negative press, the speculation about your relationship with Ms. Pierce, the accusations of corporate manipulation. How do you propose to quantify the damage to our reputation? Before Mike could respond, his phone buzzed, a text from Maria. Sarah needs you. Now. His heart stopped. In 8 years, Maria had never sent a message like that. Alexandra must have seen his face change. What's wrong? Sarah, he showed her the text. She stood immediately. We'll reconvene tomorrow. Ms. Pierce, the chairman warned. This meeting can wait, she finished firmly. Family comes first. That's what this whole initiative is about, isn't it? The flight home was a blur. Alexandra insisted on flying him herself in the smaller corporate jet, breaking speed records. They found Maria waiting at the small airport, tears in her eyes. Some boys at school, she explained. They showed her those tabloid stories, said terrible things about her father, about Ms. Pierce. She ran away during lunch break. We've looked everywhere. Mike's world tilted. The Toyota, still parked at school. The garage, he said suddenly. Pete's garage. They found her there, curled up in the back seat of an old Chevy Pete had been restoring. The same car she used to nap in as a toddler while Mike worked late shifts. I wanted things to be simple. Again, she whispered, when Mike gathered her into his arms. When you were just my daddy who fixed cars and read me stories. Alexandra hung back by the garage door, her face a mask of guilt and concern. Pete appeared from his office, took in the scene, and quietly began closing up shop to give them privacy. I'm so sorry, Princess, Mike murmured into Sarah's hair. I thought I was building something better for us. You are, Sarah hiccuped. Those boys don't understand. Their dads don't build things or fix things or help people. But it's hard. Daddy, the cameras and the lies, and I miss Mom. She'd know how to make it right. Alexandra stepped forward hesitantly. Sarah, would it help if your dad stepped back from public events for a while? We could restructure things, keep him behind the scenes. No, Sarah sat up fiercely. That's what they want. For Daddy to hide, to stop helping people. Mom always said, she wiped her eyes, Mom always said you can't let mean people stop you from doing good things. Mike held his daughter, feeling her strength and her fragility. Outside Pete's garage, another day was ending in their small town. Soon the factory shift would change, sending Tommy Martinez and other apprentices home to their families. Tomorrow, more community proposals would need review, more doors would need opening. But right now, in this moment, everything hung in the balance. The weight of two worlds, corporate towers and small-town garages, pressed down on a father and daughter trying to find their way through the storm. Alexandra touched the old Chevy's hood gently. Your mum was right, Sarah. And maybe she does know how to make this right. Through you. The resignation letter sat unopened in Mike's email drafts. 3 sentences that could end everything. Return them to their simple life, away from cameras and whispers, back to the world they understood. His cursor hovered over the send button. As dawn broke over Main Street, he hadn't slept. Sarah was at her grandparents' house, her choice needing space to think. The emptiness of the house echoed with her absence. A knock at the door startled him. Alexandra stood there, looking, as sleepless as he felt, holding a thick manila envelope. The board's response to yesterday, she said, settling into Emily's old chair. They've given us an ultimatum. Mike didn't reach for the envelope. Let me guess. Either I start playing by their corporate rulebook or they'll shut down the whole community initiative. Alexandra's voice cracked. Everything we've built, Millbrook, the apprentice program, all of it. The weight of those words hung in the pre-dawn quiet. From somewhere outside came the sound of the early shift heading to the factory, lives they'd helped rebuild, families they'd helped hold together. I've been up all night, Alexandra continued, trying to find another way. My father's on our side, but the board, they're talking about forcing a vote of no confidence. Not just against you, but against me. Mike opened his desk drawer, pulled out Sarah's latest school photo. She was smiling, but it wasn't the carefree smile from before. I did this to her. To us. No, Alexandra said firmly. I did this. I dragged you into my corporate war without considering the real cost. She stood pacing the small kitchen. You know what's ironic? The board was right about me being out of touch, just not in the way they thought. I was so focused on proving them wrong, on showing them the value of community investment, that I forgot about the actual communities, the actual people. Mike's phone buzzed. A text from Tommy Martinez. Hey, Mr. A, just heard rumors about the program shutting down. Please tell me it's not true. Some of us were finally starting to believe in futures here. The resignation letter glowed on his screen, offering an escape. One click and they could go back to 3 jobs and stretched budgets, but also back to peace, simple dreams, safety. Then another text came through, this one from Sarah. Daddy, Grandma showed me Mum's old journals. She wrote about her dreams for me, about wanting me to be brave even when things are hard. I want to come home. Alexandra watched him reading the messages. Whatever you decide, I'll understand, and I'll make sure the families we've helped are protected. Mike stood, walking to the window. The sun was rising properly now, painting their small town in shades of possibility. Outside Pete's garage, a line of cars waited for repair, the same way they had that rainy night when a stranger needed help. You know what Emily used to say about tough choices? He turned to Alexandra. She said they're not really about choosing between right and wrong. They're about choosing what kind of right you want to fight for. He deleted the resignation draft. The board wants corporate metrics? Let's give them some, but our way. Alexandra straightened. What are you thinking? Mike grabbed his keys, the Toyotas still among them, a reminder of where this all began. First, I need to pick up my daughter. Then we're going to Millbrook. The board meeting's in 3 hours. Exactly. Time enough to show them what real investment looks like. He paused at the door. You come in? An hour later, they stood in the Millbrook factory floor, surrounded by workers, apprentices, and family members. Sarah sat perched on a workbench, filming with Alexandra's phone as Tommy Martinez explained their training program to the gathered crowd. Send it, Mike nodded to his daughter. Send it to the whole board. Sarah pressed the button, broadcasting the real story, not through corporate presentations or PR statements, but through the voices of the people whose lives had changed. One more thing, Mike said, turning to Alexandra. If we're going to fight for this, we need to fight smart. No more hiding from cameras or dodging rumors. We show them exactly who we are and what we're building. Alexandra smiled, understanding dawning. A family business. In every sense of the word. Mike's phone buzzed. A message from Charles. Pierce, the board's watching the live stream. Keep going. Sarah hopped down from her perch, slipping her hand into her father's. Together, they faced the cameras they'd been hiding from, ready to tell their story their way. Sometimes the hardest doors to open were the ones you built yourself. But with the right keys, truth, courage, and a little girl's unwavering faith, even the strongest walls could fall. The boardroom was silent as Alexandra stood, holding a weathered photograph. Not in Chicago this time. They'd insisted on meeting in Millbrook, in the newly renovated factory conference room where apprentices usually gathered for training. This is the last photo taken of my mother, she said, her voice steady but vulnerable in a way Mike had never heard before. It was at my grandfather's garage a month before she died. I was 8. Sarah, sitting between Mike and Charles Pierce, leaned forward. In the photo, a young Alexandra stood beside a beautiful woman in overalls. both covered in engine grease and smiling. Mum loved working on cars with Grandpa. She said machines were honest. They either worked or they didn't. No corporate politics involved. Alexandra smiled faintly. The board members back then hated it. A Pierce heiress getting her hands dirty? Scandalous. She placed the photo carefully on the table. A week after this was taken, she went to a board meeting, fought to keep the garage open when they wanted to sell it for development. On her way home, Alexandra paused. Black ice. A truck couldn't stop in time. The silence deepened. Even the most hardened board members shifted uncomfortably. I buried myself in business. School, Alexandra continued. Harvard, MBA, all the right moves. Became exactly what everyone expected, until that night in the rain, when a security guard handed me his car keys without asking anything in return. She looked at Mike. It wasn't just kindness I recognized. It was authenticity, the same thing my mother tried to protect, that my grandfather built this company on. Charles Pierce cleared his throat. Alexandra's mother understood something it took me years to relearn. Success isn't just measured in profit margins, it's measured in lives changed, communities built, trust earned. That's all very touching. One board member interjected, but sentiment doesn't pay shareholders. Actually, Tommy Martinez spoke up from the back of the room where several apprentices stood. It does. He stepped forward, spreading papers across the table. These are the numbers Mr. Anderson helped me compile. Retention rates, training costs, community investment returns. When workers feel connected to a company, when they trust their leaders, productivity increases. Customer loyalty grows. We're not just employees. We're stakeholders in our own futures. Mike watched his daughter watching Tommy, saw her recognition of what real leadership looked like, passed down through generations, crossing all boundaries of wealth and status. My wife, Emily, Mike said quietly, used to tell her students that the most important things in life can't be measured in traditional ways, like the value of a mother's love, or a daughter's courage, or a stranger's trust. He stood. But some things can be measured. Families staying together because they can find work locally, kids seeing futures in their hometown, communities believing in themselves again. Alexandra nodded. That's what my mother was fighting. For not just a garage, but a principle. That business should serve people, not the other way around. Sarah pulled something from her backpack, a stack of letters. These came to our house, from families in Millbrook, from other towns asking for help. They're not writing to Pierce Industries. They're writing to my dad and Ms. Alexandra because they trust them. Charles Pierce took one of the letters, read it silently. Perhaps, he said to the board, we've been measuring success with the wrong tools. Alexandra touched the photo of her mother. I spent years trying to prove myself to this board, but I realize now I was really trying to prove something to her, that her death wasn't for nothing, that the values she fought for could still win. They can, Sarah said with a child's simple certainty. They already are. The board members looked at each other, then at the scene before them. A security guard's daughter, a billionaire's heir, and a room full of working-class apprentices, all united by something more powerful than corporate protocols. My mother would have loved this. Alexandra smiled, tears in her eyes. She would have loved all of you. Outside the conference room windows, the factory floor hummed with life. Parents working alongside their children, teaching trades, building futures. Inside, something just as vital was being rebuilt. Trust in the possibility that business could have a heart, that authenticity could trump artifice, that a mother's dreams could live on through her daughter's courage to be real. Mike thought of another mother's dreams, living on through Sarah's unwavering faith in doing what was right. Some legacies, he realized, didn't need measuring, they just needed the freedom to grow. Community first, profits follow. The new company motto gleamed on the wall of what used to be Pete's office at the garage. Now it was the headquarters of Pierce Community Development's apprentice training program. Though Pete still kept his tools in the corner and worked on cars between mentoring sessions. It's really happening, Alexandra said, watching through the window as Tommy Martinez led a group of new apprentices through their orientation. The board actually approved everything. Mike smiled, adjusting the frame holding their first joint. Business plan, written on the back of a paper placemat from Joe's Diner during a late-night planning session. They approved it because it works. 6 new towns already implementing the Millbrook model. And because a certain 8-year-old shamed them into remembering their humanity, Alexandra added. Sarah was outside with the apprentices, proudly, wearing her official Junior Community Coordinator badge, a title she'd created herself and that the board had unanimously approved. She was showing them her latest project, a wall of photos documenting the town's transformation. You know what Emily would say about all this? Maria appeared in the doorway, carrying her signature tea tray. These days, she split her time between watching younger children while their parents trained and keeping everyone well-fed with her legendary cooking. What? Mike asked. That sometimes the best families are the ones we build together? She set down the tray. Like how that young Tommy comes by every Sunday to help with my garden, or how Mrs. Pierce Sr. is teaching our girls business math. After school, Alexandra's mother's photo now hung beside Emily's in the office, 2 women who'd believed in the power of authenticity and community. Their legacy lived on in unexpected ways. Speaking of building things, Alexandra pulled out a blueprint. The board approved our biggest project yet. A network of community centers starting right here. Training facilities, childcare, small business incubators. Everything we've learned, a town needs to thrive. Mike studied the plans. The design incorporated elements of both worlds. Modern, efficiency melded with small-town warmth, just like them. We'll need to hire more staff, he noted. People who understand both sides of this. Already ahead of you. Alexandra grinned. Remember Jenny from my old office? She's moving here with her family, says she wants her kids to grow up somewhere real. Outside, Sarah was demonstrating to the apprentices how her father had taught her to check oil levels, standing on her tiptoes, explaining with the same patience Mike had always shown her. Several of them were taking notes. She's going to run this whole thing someday, isn't she? Alexandra said softly. Both sides of it, Mike agreed. The heart and the business. His phone buzzed. A text from Helen, Emily's mother. These days, she and Robert were their biggest supporters, proud to see their daughter's values living on in such a meaningful way. The camera crews are coming next week, Mike remembered, for that documentary about community-based business. Development. Good, Alexandra said firmly. Let them see what real change looks like. No more hiding. The afternoon sun slanted through the garage windows, catching the gold lettering of their motto. Below it, Sarah had added her own sign in careful crayon, Daddy and Ms. Alexandra's door-opening business. Pete's voice carried from the workshop, teaching a young apprentice the same lesson he'd once taught Mike. Sometimes the most important tool in your box isn't a wrench, it's trust. Maria poured tea into Emily's old cups, the ones with tiny roses around the rim. To family, she said, in all its forms. They raised their cups as Sarah bounded in, engine grease on her cheek, eyes bright with purpose. Tommy says I can help teach the new kids about carburetors tomorrow. Just like you taught me, Daddy. Mike looked at his daughter, so confident now in both her worlds, at Alexandra, who'd found her mother's truth again, at Maria, who'd helped hold them all together, at the photo wall, where Emily's smile blessed. It all. To family, he echoed, and to keeping all the right doors open. Through the window, they could see the apprentices gathering around Tommy's latest project, a familiar Toyota Corolla, being restored as a training vehicle. Some doors, it seemed, never really closed. They just led to bigger rooms, where more people could gather, learn, and grow together. 6 months later, Mike stood before the blueprint of their most ambitious project yet, the Pierce Community Innovation Center. The 3-story building would combine everything they'd learned, a state-of-the-art training facility, small business, incubator spaces, childcare center, and even a rooftop garden designed by Maria. "Look what just arrived," Alexandra called, wheeling in a cart laden with frames. Inside each one was a front-page article. The Pierce Anderson model, revolutionizing community development. The story had been picked up by major newspapers across the country. "Dad! Ms. Alexandra!" Sarah burst in, still in her school uniform. "Tommy got his acceptance letter." Behind her, Tommy Martinez entered more sedately, but his grin gave him away. He held up an envelope bearing the Massachusetts Institute of Technology logo. Full scholarship to their engineering program, plus a guaranteed internship here during summers. Mike embraced the young man who'd become like a son. "Your parents must be ecstatic." "Mom cried for an hour," Tommy admitted. "Dad too, but he claims it was allergies. And the best part," Sarah bounced on her toes, "is that Tommy's going to help design our new youth STEM program before he goes. I already have ideas for the robotics club." Alexandra smiled at Sarah's enthusiasm. These days, the 9-year-old spent hours in their offices after school, absorbing everything from engineering principles to community organizing. She'd even started a junior business council with other employees' children. Speaking of programs, Alexandra pulled out her tablet. The numbers from our first 6 partner towns came in. Employment up 40%, small business creation up 65%, and this is my favorite stat, 85% of young people saying they see a future in their hometowns. The door opened again as Pete and Maria arrived for their daily planning meeting. These sessions had evolved into a kind of family dinner, with Maria's cooking and Pete's practical wisdom helping them stay grounded as they grew. "Brought someone with me," Pete announced. Helen and Robert Green entered behind him, carrying what looked like old photo albums. "We were cleaning out the attic," Helen explained, "and found Emily's college journals. Her thesis was on community-based education. All these ideas about connecting schools with local businesses, creating real-world learning opportunities. Just like what we're doing now," Sarah said softly, touching the journals. Robert cleared his throat. "She'd be so proud of all this, of all of you." The group gathered around the conference table, no longer the polished corporate furniture from Chicago, but a handmade piece crafted by Millbrook's woodworking apprentices. Maria began setting out containers of her latest recipes, while Pete spread out the construction plans for their new center. "Remember when this all started?" Tommy mused, looking at a photo on the wall, Mike handing Alexandra the Toyota keys. "In that rainy night, one car, one act of trust. Now look at us," Alexandra gestured at their blueprint. 20 towns by next year, a whole new model of ethical business development. All because Daddy knows how to open doors," Sarah finished, making them all laugh. Mike watched his daughter poring over her mother's journals, saw how naturally she moved between Tommy's engineering drawings and Alexandra's business proposals. She was growing up in a world where community and commerce weren't opposing forces, but partners in something greater. The sun was setting outside their windows, casting long shadows across Main Street. The evening shift was arriving at the factory. Parents dropping children at Maria's newly expanded daycare center, apprentices heading to night classes at the training facility. "You know what Mom wrote here?" Sarah looked up from a journal. She said, "True wealth isn't what you have, it's what you build together." Alexandra touched the photo of her own mother. "2 amazing women who saw the future before we did." 3, Mike corrected, looking at his daughter. "Maybe even more." They worked late into the evening, planning and dreaming. The corporate world and small-town values had stopped being opposing forces, becoming instead complementary strengths. Every spreadsheet had a story behind it, every policy a human purpose. When Sarah finally fell asleep on the office couch, Mike covered her with the same blanket he'd once used during his night security shifts. Some things hadn't changed. His desire to protect her, to build a better world for her. But now that world was bigger, richer, full of possibilities Emily had dreamed of, and Alexandra had helped make real. Together, they were building something. that transcended business metrics or community boundaries. They were building proof that with the right balance of heart and mind, of trust and innovation, any door could become a bridge. "Close your eyes," Alexandra insisted, leading Mike and Sarah through the early morning mist toward Pete's garage. "No peeking." "Is this about the merger announcement?" Mike asked, keeping his eyes shut as Sarah guided him by the hand. The business world was buzzing with rumors about Pierce Industries' latest moves. "Better," Alexandra replied. "Much better." The garage door rolled up with its familiar creak. Pete's voice called out, "Okay, open them." Mike opened his eyes and froze. There in the center of the garage sat his old Toyota Corolla, but not as he remembered it. The car had been completely restored, every dent smoothed, every scratch erased, the faded paint replaced with a gleaming deep blue finish. But it wasn't just restored. It was transformed while somehow remaining exactly what it had always been. "How?" he managed, moving closer. "Tommy led the restoration team," Alexandra explained. "Every apprentice in the program contributed something. They've been working on it for months between training sessions." Sarah bounced with excitement. "I helped pick the color. It's the same blue as Mom's favorite dress." Mike ran his hand along the familiar hood. The car looked brand new, but the small imperfections he knew by heart were still there. The slightly crooked rear-view mirror Sarah had once tried to fix. The tiny heart Emily had scratched into the dashboard on their first date. "Look, inside," Pete urged. The interior had been reborn, new upholstery that somehow matched the old pattern, modern features seamlessly integrated with the classic design. On the passenger seat lay a small photo album. "Open it," Alexandra said, softly. Inside were photographs documenting the car's journey. Mike driving Sarah to her first day of school, Emily teaching Sarah to help wash it, the night Mike handed the keys to a rain-soaked stranger. The final page held the original keys, mounted, alongside a simple message. "Some doors are worth keeping open. We thought about getting you a new car," Alexandra admitted. "Something fancy corporate, but that wouldn't be right. This car, it's part of your story, our story." Tommy appeared from the workshop, along with other apprentices who'd worked on the restoration. "We added some special features," he explained, proudly. "Modern safety systems, better fuel efficiency, even a small computer system, but all hidden, all keeping the soul of the original." Mike noticed other familiar faces gathering. Maria, Helen and Robert, Charles Pierce, even Board. Members who'd once doubted this whole journey. The garage was filling with people whose lives had become intertwined through a simple act of trust on a rainy night. "There's one more thing," Alexandra said, suddenly looking nervous. She reached into the glove compartment and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a certificate of ownership for the newly formed Pierce Anderson Community Trust, a legally binding document ensuring their vision of ethical business development would continue for generations. "I want to make it official," Alexandra said, her voice soft but clear. "Not just the business partnership, but everything. The trust we've built, the family we've made, the future we see." She took a deep breath. "If you're willing." The garage fell silent. Sarah looked between them, her eyes wide with understanding and hope. Mike thought of another moment in this garage, years ago, when Emily had helped him rebuild the Toyota's engine. "Sometimes," she'd said, "the most valuable things are the ones you put back together with love." He looked at Alexandra, no longer the rain-soaked stranger or the corporate heiress, but his partner in building something larger than themselves, at Sarah, who'd shown them all how to bridge two worlds with grace and wisdom beyond her years. The morning sun broke through the garage windows, catching the Toyota's pristine finish. In its reflection, Mike could see all of them. The unlikely family they'd built, the community they'd transformed, the future they'd crafted from trust and authenticity. "Yes," he said simply, "to all of it." Sarah whooped with joy as applause and filled the garage. Maria wiped tears from her eyes, while Pete pretended he had something in his. Tommy and his apprentices exchanged proud grins, knowing they'd been part of something special. Alexandra's hands trembled slightly as she handed Mike the keys, the old ones restored just like the car. Ready for the next chapter? Mike looked at his daughter, saw Emily's smile in her eyes. What do you think, princess? One more door to open. Sarah took both their hands, joining them. The biggest one yet, Daddy, the biggest one yet. The wedding wasn't held in a grand cathedral or luxury hotel. Instead, they chose the newly completed community center's rooftop garden, Maria's pride and joy, where herbs and flowers created a natural cathedral under the open sky. The restored Toyota, polished to perfection, sat prominently near the entrance, decorated with white ribbons, and Sarah's hand-painted "Just Married" sign. Ready? Sarah asked, adjusting her junior bridesmaid dress. She'd insisted on blue, the same shade as the Toyota, the same color as her mother's favorite dress. Mike straightened his tie, simple and elegant like everything else about this day. Ready as I'll ever be. Helen appeared, touching his arm. Emily would love this, she said softly. All of it. She placed something in his hand. Emily's old keychain, the one that had held the Toyota's keys for so many years. Something old, something borrowed. Below in the garden, guests were gathering, not divided into brides and grooms' sides, but mingled together like the communities. They'd united. Factory workers sat beside board members. Apprentices chatted with corporate executives. All barriers dissolved in the celebration of something authentic. Tommy Martinez, now home from his first semester at MIT, stood with his engineering students. They'd created a special wedding gift, a working miniature model of their first factory, complete with tiny apprentices and a replica of the famous Toyota. Alexandra waited at the front, radiant in a simple white dress that would have made fashion magazines gasp, but felt perfect for who she truly was. Her father, Charles, stood beside her, his eyes misty as he watched Sarah lead Mike down the aisle. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. They'd written their own vows, speaking not just of love but of trust, of opening doors together, of building bridges between worlds. When Sarah stepped forward to read a passage from Emily's journal about love and new beginnings, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. By the power of love, trust, and community, the minister concluded, I now pronounce you. A familiar bell chimed, the one from Pete's garage that had announced so many new beginnings. The crowd erupted in cheers as Mike and Alexandra kissed, Sarah beaming between them. The reception felt more like a community gathering than a formal wedding party. Maria's cooking took center stage, served alongside dishes prepared by local restaurants. The apprentices had built the dance floor themselves, and the first dance was accompanied by a band made up of factory workers and their families. Look, what Tommy helped me make, Sarah said later, presenting them with a special gift. It was a detailed scrapbook documenting their journey from that rainy night to today. The final pages were blank, waiting for new chapters. For all the stories still to come, she explained. As evening fell, lights twinkled in the rooftop garden. Alexandra found Mike standing by the Toyota, lost in thought. Penny, for your thoughts, she asked, slipping her hand in his. Just thinking. About doors, he smiled, and how sometimes the best ones lead you right back home, just by a different path. Sarah joined them, followed by Maria, Pete, the Greens, Charles Pierce, Tommy and others, their extended family, bound not by blood but by something just as strong, shared dreams, common purpose, and the courage to trust in new beginnings. The restored Toyota gleamed in the garden lights, its new features hidden beneath its familiar shell, just like the way their lives had been transformed while keeping their essential truth. On its dashboard, next to Emily's scratched heart, they'd added a small plaque. Every ending is just a beginning in disguise. Ready to go? Alexandra asked as the evening wound down. Their honeymoon would be a working one, visiting community projects across the country, spreading their model of ethical development. Mike looked at his daughter, now falling asleep against Maria's shoulder. At Tommy, teaching younger apprentices. A new dance step. At board members and factory workers sharing stories over Maria's desserts, at his new wife, who'd walked through his door on a rainy night and helped him build a bridge between worlds. "Ready," he said. "Always ready for the next door." They drove away in the Toyota, of course. It was the only choice that made sense. Behind them, the community center glowed like a lighthouse, guiding others toward the possibility that business could have a heart, that communities could thrive, that love could bridge any gap. And Sarah's just married sign fluttered in the breeze, written in the same careful letters she'd once used to label her father's tools, back when their world was smaller, but their hearts were just as full. 1 year later, the old Toyota pulled up to the community center on a crisp autumn morning. Sarah, now 10, was first out, racing ahead with an armful of photographs for the center's first anniversary celebration. Mike and Alexandra followed more, slowly, enjoying the sight of their daughter's enthusiasm. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Alexandra asked, her hand resting lightly on her growing belly. Their newest family member was due in spring. Around the same time, the 100th Pierce Anderson Community Center would open its doors. The main hall was already buzzing with activity. Tommy had flown in from MIT to present the latest innovations. From their youth engineering program, Maria supervised an army of local cooks preparing for the celebration, while Pete gave tours of the expanded training facilities. "Dad!" Sarah called from near the memory wall she'd created. "Come see what I found!" The wall had grown over the year, telling not just their story, but the stories of countless others whose lives had been transformed. Sarah pointed to a newly added photo, Emily's college graduation picture, standing proud in her cap and gown. "Grandma Helen found it yesterday," Sarah explained. "Look what Mom wrote on the back." Mike turned the frame over. In Emily's familiar handwriting was a quote, "Education isn't just about learning facts. It's about learning to believe in possibilities." "She would love what you've built here," came a voice behind them. Charles Pierce approached, leaning on his cane, but his eyes bright with pride. "Both of you, all of you." Through the windows, they could see groups arriving for the celebration. The Millbrook factory workers, now partners in their own business. Apprentices from 20 different towns, some already running their own programs. Board members who'd become true believers in the power of community-based development. Tommy gathered everyone in the main hall, standing beside the scale model of their first project that had grown to include each new development. "A year ago," he began, "we celebrated a wedding here, but we were really celebrating something bigger, the marriage of two ideas. That business can have a heart, and that community is the best investment you can make." Sarah stepped forward, unveiling her latest project, a documentary she'd created with help from the youth media program. "And this is just the beginning," she announced. "Wait until you see what we're planning for the next 10 years. The crowd laughed, but Mike and Alexandra exchanged knowing looks. Their daughter's 10-year plan was actually quite impressive, combining sustainable development with cultural preservation and technological innovation. As the celebration continued, Mike found himself back at the memory wall. The photo of that rainy night still held pride of place. The moment he'd handed his keys to a stranger and opened a door neither of them had expected. Alexandra joined him, their hands finding each other naturally. "Any regrets?" she asked. Mike looked around at their extended family, Sarah teaching younger kids about community organizing, Tommy mentoring the next generation of engineers, Maria creating new programs for family support, Pete expanding the apprenticeships. At the UB, Toyota outside, still running perfectly, still carrying them to new adventures. "Just one," he smiled, "that Emily can't see all this, though sometimes I think she can." "She can," Sarah said, appearing beside them. "Through us, through everything we build together." The sound of children laughing drew their attention to the rooftop garden, where Maria was giving a tour to families interested in starting there. own community gardens. The apprentices were demonstrating new sustainable technologies they'd developed, while board members discussed expansion plans with local leaders. Their simple act of trust had grown into something extraordinary, not just bridging communities, but transforming them, creating a new model for ethical business that was spreading across the country. "Ready for the next chapter?" Alexandra asked, one hand on her belly, the other holding Mike's. Sarah grinned, pulling out her ever-present notebook filled with new ideas. "I already have plans." Mike looked at his daughter, so much like Emily, in her determination to make the world better, yet uniquely herself in how she brought people together. At his wife, who'd helped him see that sometimes the biggest dreams were the most practical ones. At the community they'd built, proving that success could be measured in lives changed and hope restored. "Ready?" he said, keys in his pocket, family by his side, doors opening everywhere he looked. Always ready. Outside, the Toyota waited faithfully, its restored finish gleaming in the sunlight. On its back window, Sarah had added a new sign. Below her, just married artwork from the wedding. Every mile a new beginning, and that's exactly what it was. Every day, every project, every life touched, all new beginnings, all doors opening, all dreams becoming reality, just the way Emily would have wanted it, just the way they'd built it, together.